What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another one of my games where we analyze what I played and we see how we plan and strategize throughout an entire chess game. So, this game begins with me playing the move pawn to d4. Now, by nature, I'm a pawn to d4 player. I simply like playing the London system and also the Queen's Gambit. I enjoy both of those openings quite a lot, so I play them quite a lot. And so, yeah, d4 is on the board, d5. Bishop to f4, the London system is being prepared. Pawn to e6, e3, and my opponent strikes back at my bishop right away in the opening phase itself. Now, when you play an opponent like this, what you have to keep in your mind is that this is a person who's gonna pawn storm you. This person simply loves doing it. That's his style of playing. His or her, doesn't really matter. But you're gonna get pawn stormed. And you have to prepare for that. And there are a few things to keep in mind when you get pawn stormed. And I'll walk you through those things as this match progresses. So the first thing we have to do over here is we have to ensure our bishop does not get trapped. If this move appears on the board, which is h5 and followed by h4, and our bishop is somehow ending up on g3 over here, our bishop will get trapped. So that's the knight. So the bishop, that is, if it's still there in g3, we are going to get our bishop trapped. So you have to ensure that that does not happen. In the opening phase itself, instead of focusing completely on development, you might have to think about the safety of the pieces you've already developed against a pawn pusher, right? So we continue with the match. We retreat to g3, and the move h5 appears on the board. So we create some breathing room for our bishop so that in case there's no other square left, this is where we can come back. Understand, this particular square does not necessarily provide a safe haven for your bishop because the move pawn to f6 can appear at any point of time and your bishop will then be completely trapped. So always have an extra square available. So we continue with the match. My opponent develops, we develop our bishop as well, and the move h4 appears on the board and we tuck our bishop in. In this position, you could also consider that instead of coming back to h2 right away, maybe going and creating a tempo and then coming back. But that doesn't really help. You're going to get kicked out of there anyway. So instead, we just continue with the match by tucking our bishop back. But if you prefer doing it that way, that's not incorrect either. So we continue the match. Opponent develops a knight. Bishop pawn is moved and a trade of bishops is offered. So at this point we go ahead and trade bishops because oftentimes when your bishop is over here in h2, your opponent will trade bishops right away and you never know, since neither of the kings have castled yet, you might have to castle on this side, and if you have to capture the bishop with your rook, then you lose your castling rights. You cannot castle on the king side anyway, which gives your opponent more ideas to attack you, which you don't want. So we go on with the game, developing moves. Knights come out, knights go back as well. I push the pawn in the center, opening up the center, and we start putting pressure. So in chess, this is a very important concept. Oftentimes you'll see a lot of chess players saying that you want to put pressure on your opponent's position. So this is what pressure means, right? You're attacking this pawn twice and it's only defended once. So because it's defended just once, your opponent has to work to defend it. And that is pressure. And the more pressure you create with time, at some point of time, your opponent's position will crumble down until unless they're very good at handling pressure, right? Now, in this particular position, although we are putting pressure on our opponent's pawn, there's a few more things that you really need to be aware of. If somehow the h file opens up and your opponent decides to push the pawn forward, you may not be in a position to capture back if the h file is somehow completely open, because your rook is currently not protected by the other rook. Your rooks are not connected. And you don't want to hang your rook this way. And this is something that you would commonly face against a pawn pusher. That's what pushing pawns essentially wants to do. They will often give up material just to open up files and your pieces may be pinned. So this pawn may be pinned in the future if this pawn did not exist, and you would not be able to capture with the h pawn. And these are things you need to be aware of. So our opponent has to react to the pressure we have created on this pawn, just in case you've forgotten. So it got defended. And you have to realize with every pawn that is pushed forward, weaknesses are created in the back rank. And you have to try to take an advantage of that and attack the weaknesses and create more pressure. So how do we go about doing that? We put pressure on the b pawn. That's how we start. And my opponent here gives me a big advantage by defending with the knight. Now you've heard the saying, which is pretty common, that knights on the rim are dim, and that is oftentimes the case. So how do we ensure that we take full advantage of the dim knight over here? So we play the move queen to a3. So this is a very common idea in most chess matches. You want to play a move that comes with as many threats as possible. If you can create one threat, one point of pressure, that's good. But if you can create many more, that's what's going to help you win the match. And over here, we are putting pressure on two particular places. One is on this knight, obviously, the knight we just attacked. And the other is this pawn. So this pawn is currently being attacked by the knight and the queen, while it's being defended by the queen only. So my opponent has to react to both of those threats at the same time. And that is easier said than done. The only way that can be done is if the knight could move to some square, but where it could defend the pawn directly. And those two squares are these two squares. From these two squares, the knight can guard the pawn. But both of the squares are impossible to go to. One is being taken up by his own pawn, and the other is being guarded by my bishop in case you forgot about him. So my opponent has to react in a different way. He chooses to play actively and attacks my knight back while offering a queen exchange right here. So he's like, well, let's exchange queens and then we can both defend our knights. Both our knights will be safe. But this is where we have to think of, all right, we could exchange queens and we could bring our knight back. We can do all that stuff. But is there something better in the position? And there is. So I'll give you a couple of seconds. Take that time off and see if you can find a better move in this particular position. And comment down below in the comment section if you found it. Let me know that you are able to find this move. So the move that we want to play in this position is knight captures on f6. So this move comes with a check. So a queen exchange cannot happen. And at the same time, whether the knight gets captured by the queen or the knight, we are free to pick up the knight after that. Knight gets captured, we capture back our material, and we've won one pawn. And even more important than the one pawn is we've created holes in our opponent's position, where now the base of the pawn chain can be attacked. The king is more open to attacks as well from every direction. And if you can get your bishops and knights in there, that's very good. And chess is a very positional game. Oftentimes you win a match simply because your pieces are in ideal positions, and a position like this is known as an outpost, and you want to put your knights or bishops on an outpost where it would be a continuous nuisance for your opponent. Our knight gets attacked by this knight and also the queen at the same time. So this is an attack that we have to react to. So there are a few options here. We could move our queen away, but that would not be a good move. Then our knight would get taken, and once we capture back with the pawn, the queen is free to take the pawn back. So, and don't think you can defend the knight simply by playing a move like queen to c7, because that doesn't help. Your queen would get kicked by moves like rook to c8. So that's not a very good move. That could put you could hang your queen if you go in there. Those are risks better not taken. So in this position, we have two real options. One is to capture the knight, and there's another good option. I'll give you guys a couple of seconds again. Go ahead and see if you can find the other move. I'm not saying that move is any better than capturing the knight, but then again, it's an option. So the option that we have in this position is knight captures the bishop. So that's what I went for, because what this threatens at this point is, right, if our queen gets captured, we can simply capture the opponent's queen. And you can see the eval bar going up like insane. So that would be winning an extra piece altogether. But that's not what's transpired in the actual game. What happened is the knight was captured by the king, and there we gained something even more important. Even if the best move was to capture the knight, or you don't know whether capturing the knight or the bishop is better, it's always good to make your opponent lose his castling rights and trap his king in the center. Now my opponent can never castle, and that way he's not getting to safety anytime soon. So we still have castling rights left, right? We can castle queen side or king side either way if we want to, but our opponent does not. So we continue playing the position. A few more moves take place, and I castle to the queen side. Now, when you look into this position on a rough look, it looks like I've hanged a free pawn. Maybe I have. But capturing this pawn can get you into a ton of trouble. My opponent does capture this pawn, but what this does is it allows me a bunch of moves that all come with a tempo. So you'll see what I mean. Currently, our bishop is being threatened and our pawn is also being threatened. So our first move is attacking the knight. This comes with tempo, there's a double attack, and my opponent has to react. So he reacts, he saves his knight, but now you can see the eval bar going up. Now everything comes into play and with tempo. The next attack is on the queen, and my opponent tries to get away with the tempo as well by giving a check. But that does not really help in this position. We can just step out of the check and we are like, well, what you gonna do about this move? So my opponent reacts to it. He defends his second rank, he has to. You don't want to get infiltrated on your second rank. That usually almost always leads to a checkmate or drastic material loss, and you have to resign the match. So that is defended, but there were more threats than one in that particular position. This is another threat in this position. And now the queen does not have any squares. This square, although you can go there, but that's going to be pretty disastrous as well because the bishop can simply come down here, and then in this diagonal, the rook and queen are on the same diagonal. And to be quite frank, there's no place to go for the queen from here either once the bishop comes down here. Because look here, this square is taken by the pawn, this by the rook, and this by the pawn. So why do you go? You can't come down either. This square is still guarded by the bishop. So there's really nowhere to go, and this square is guarded obviously by the rook. So there's nowhere to go, so my opponent chooses to sacrifice the queen instead. And this is now a completely winning position. You just have to convert it correctly. We capture the queen back. There's nothing better. And our bishop gets attacked. So the first move that comes to your mind is maybe let's move the bishop and defend the bishop. But in reality, we don't have to defend the bishop. You have to observe the pin over here. There's a pin on this particular rook over here. If you capture the bishop, the rook will fall. And materially comparing, the rook is far more valuable than the bishop. So we don't really have to react to this threat. We can create our own. We go ahead and threaten the pawn over here. Infiltration being threatened again. So our opponent reacts to it. He unpins. The rook is now defended by the king. So we have to move our piece away. And we do everything, if possible, with a tempo. It wins you time, it lets you continue on with the attack. Rook defends pawn. Pawn is attacked again. Now these are things you always have to look for. This rook, although is busy guarding the pawn, nothing is guarding the rook. So we can go ahead and play this move with the same idea in mind. There's a pin. You cannot capture because then my rook captures the rook. Our queen is kicked out. We assume a more favorable diagonal where we can continue to stay on the attack. Understand we are attacking a rook. Whenever we can make a move with tempo, we do. The knight comes out, winning a tempo on the queen and defending the rook both at the same time. So can't capture the rook anymore. It's not just attacking your queen. So we move to a square where there won't be an attack on the queen anymore while we continue to threaten the rook. The pressure must keep building. Rook defends rook. And at this point, this rook is defended by two pieces, the knight and the rook. So while we also have only two attackers, so the ultimate exchange position won't be favorable for us. For that reason, the pin doesn't exist anymore and you have to defend your bishop. So we go back with our bishop. If you want me to demonstrate what that means, What I essentially mean is if we don't defend our bishop and play a silly move right here, this can happen. The bishop can get taken. Even if you take the rook will capture back, and you cannot capture with the queen because you hang your queen and the game along with that. So we don't want to do that from a completely winning position. We defend our bishop instead, keeping our material intact. Pawn is pushed, there's an exchange in the center, and whenever you're up in material, you want to exchange as much as possible. If we can trade off this bishop for the knight as well, then that's even better. That's rook versus queen. And rook versus queen is completely winning for the queen. You can just go gobble up all the pawns and promote your own. So that's what we attempt to do over here, is just a conversion process of a completely winning endgame. We manage to pin the knight and exchange it for the bishop, and then it's just pawn pickings, easy. And at this point we can even exchange the rook for the queen, because two extra pawns will just walk away. The king can never stop these pawns and these pawns at the same time. So we continue playing, and in this position we offered a queen trade, queen for the rook essentially, but it really doesn't matter, because if the exchange does take place, it will turn into a connected passed pawn, and that's just unstoppable for the king, and my opponent resigns here. That was the last move in the game, the offer of the queen exchange. And I hope this video helps you guys and you guys get some good tips in how to think in your games. And tell me which ideas from these games you use in your own games. Tell me in the comment section. I'll be looking forward to it. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you soon with another one of my videos. Bye.